Welcome to the show, Roger Cheetham. And Roger, you have got a very long title. You are a multi-award winning international speaker and resilience specialist.
That's right, yes. Although every time I hear that introduction, I still have to look over my shoulder to see who's walked in the room behind me.
I bet you never thought a few years ago that you'd be being interviewed by many people internationally about your story.
Never whatsoever, no, never saw it coming.
So tell us what happened. Bearing in mind we're on the radio and this is going out worldwide. So tell us what happened. And I believe it was in the UK, wasn't it?
That's right, yes. I had a really life-changing event, Elaine, back on the 9th of June 2013. I'd been what we call in the UK a pub landlord. I guess around the world it could be live-in bar manager or licensee, publican, whatever title you want to give it. I'd done that job for 13 years at various different pubs in the same area of England. Took my beloved Patterdale Terrier Jasper for a walk one evening. A black and white dog with absolutely massive character. And on the way back to the pub, there were three people waiting for me with masks and balaclavas, with fence posts and baseball bats. Beat me with an inch of my life. They only actually stopped because they believed they had already killed me and left me laying in the road for dead.
Goodness. So 2013. So I guess that last few years has been quite life-changing for you in so many different ways.
Very much so, yes. It has left me with lifelong disabilities. I now have one leg 3 inch shorter than the other one, so I have to wear a built-up shoe, which causes balance issues. So I'm now on a pair of elbow crutches for life. As a result of that, I've developed sleep apnea and type 2 diabetes, as well as having a titanium floor in one eye as well. So because of the physical disabilities I have, there was no option of going back to the job I did before. And in all honesty, I don't believe I would have been able to do that anyway because of the psychological aspect of it. Whereas I would have felt okay, and then as soon as there'd been a bit of a scuffle or something happen in the corner, which even in the best run of establishments happens now and again, there would have been chance for flashbacks triggering. So it's not a job I could have gone back to. And in all honesty, I'm able to look back now, and it often raises an eyebrow when I share this, but life is actually so much better now, despite the disabilities, than it was before. That I wouldn't want to take that backwards step, Elaine.
Do you know, I hear that sentiment so often. As you may or may not know, I'm a full-time cancer survivor, and the people who I link with in that sort of world, people who've got through serious health challenges of a variety of different sorts, we all come out the same. We all come out saying the same thing because it kind of does something to us, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, yes.
So how do you see the world now differently to compared to before this incident?
The world's so different for me personally now because this has given me this has been the catalyst for change, which has given me the opportunity to get out there and share this story worldwide, not as a pity party or as a sympathy grab, but to inspire and motivate other people that choose how dark things get. Not only can you get through it, you can emerge a stronger, more positive and improved version of yourself. And sharing that message, particularly in school classrooms and school assemblies with our next generation, where I'm still able to catch our young people at an age where they are somewhat still open to being positively influenced, is so much better than life was before by serving pints of lager to a room full of regulars, or with the decline of the UK pub trade, a room not so full of regulars, in all honesty.
So what work did you do? Sorry, you were in the pub trade, but I mean, was this a full-time thing or was it a part-time bar thing? How was your life kind of day to day before the incident?
I would describe it as full-time plus, to be honest, because we were self-employed. As I touched on, the UK pub industry is very much in decline. So a typical day could have been to be up and about at 6 a.m, stoking the open fires, because some of the pubs that we had in the past were real traditional rural field pubs, seeing the beer delivery in, doing our own cleaning because you couldn't really justify the expense of paying a cleaner, and then opening up, spending anything between 12 hours plus on the bar before cashing up, closing up, and grabbing a quick cup of tea and a sandwich at the end of the evening, a few hours in bed, and starting all over again. And that was life for a long time.
That sounds really tough. So how does it differ now? What's your life looking like day to day now?
Day to day now, I share the story from stages, mainly in school classrooms and assemblies, but I also speak for networking events up and down the country. And in April of this year, I was actually invited by an all ladies group, which is an honour anyway as a male speaker. But it was an even bigger honour, the fact that it was their global AGM, which took place in New Delhi in India. And I found myself as one of 11 speakers, little male speakers, joining about 376 female speakers from over 120 countries, spreading my message of resilience before over 2,000 people.
Goodness me! Did you physically travel, or was it one of these online symposiums?
No, it was physical travel, and it coincided with mine and my wife Claire's silver wedding anniversary.
Oh, how lovely!
We were looking for somewhere different to go and celebrate 25 years because we wanted to do a holiday that was special, and I got an email inviting me to go and speak for the Women Economic Forum in New Delhi, India, literally 6 days after our silver wedding. So that was, we both went over there. I did the speaking, and then we had booked a tour on the end of it. And, you know, the day we were due to come back, stood together watching the sun rise over the Taj Mahal made it a very special silver wedding celebration.
Oh, how lovely! That's really great story. So what actually happened then? So these thugs attacked you, presumably to rob the pub, I guess.
Well, that's usually people's assumption, Elaine, but that was the motive that was actually ruled out. And to this day, we don't know what the motive was, as the three people that attacked me were never identified, let alone brought to justice. The police said it was certainly a targeted attack with me as the target rather than a random attack. But the motive of robbery was the only one that we were able to rule out, as at the time I had the keys to the pub on me, I had the keys to the pub safe on me. It was just before midnight on a Sunday night, so the whole weekend's takings were in there. I had probably £400 worth of brand new smartphone in my pocket, as well as £20 in cash, and they never attempted to take a thing from me. But at the same time, they never spoke a word to me either, which implies it was three people who I knew. When they'd gone to the trouble of wearing masks and balaclavas, hoodies and gloves, so they couldn't be identified from CCTV footage, witness statements, or hair follicles or fingerprints, I'm fairly sure the fact they never spoke a single word to me is because it was three people that knew me, and therefore three people that I knew.
Good grief, that's astonishing. So had you done anything to upset anybody that you're aware of?
Nothing that I'm aware of. There'd been no incidents in the pub which would heighten your sense of security and alertness or anything. That said, we were due to come out of the pub altogether. Our notice was in, and our notice would have expired 4 days after the attack. So I can only think that, as I touched on earlier, even the best run pubs, you do have the lunatic fringe find their way in. Over 13 years in that trade, there is a small list of people that I've barred, and I can only imagine that one of those had always vowed that they would get even with me. And when word went round that I'd be leaving the pub and the area in 4 days' time, they just thought they would have settled their vengeance there and then, although it seems quite an extreme way of doing it.
Indeed.
I'll never know for sure.
Yeah. So how do you live? I mean, have you forgiven these people?
Very much so. It's one of the things I actually share in my talk, which again does anything between raises an eyebrow and with some of the school students actually gets them going as far as raising a hand and saying, you're lying, aren't you, sir? Is when I share with them that should I come across these three people, which could happen with them still being at large, I genuinely could now shake them by the hand and thank them for the positive difference that they've made in my life. And I do believe that forgiveness is a big part of living life with more resilience anyway. So
Absolutely.
yes, I've been able to forgive.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I say that forgiveness, we need to forgive people, not because they deserve it, but because we're worth it.
Absolutely that. I think I forget who said it now, but there's a quote that I hear from many speakers saying that bearing a grudge is like drinking poison yourself and expecting the rat to die. So for that reason, by forgiving them, I've been able to draw a line under it and move on with life. And as I've shared, life is so much better and so much rewarding, so much more fulfilling now than it ever was before.
It's a very humbling experience, isn't it, when you get to that realization that actually stuff happens in life, and what could possibly be any worse than what you've endured, and you still get through it, day to day. It makes us grateful, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
And humble as well is a word that comes to mind.
Yes, very much so.
So your message then, you've mentioned about giving talks in schools and on these wonderful worldwide stages now. Do you? I'm just trying to think. You've written a book, haven't you? So do you keep a blog and so on as well as a book?
I haven't got to that stage. I do journal, and again, that's one of the things that has helped me develop my resilience and bounce back as quick as I have. But I haven't actually published anything other than the first book, which was a book that I wrote specifically for fellow trauma survivors, and that was The Life You Deserve, Surviving Trauma Through Empathy and Inner Peace.
When did you publish that, Roger?
That was published, I believe that would have been March 2015. And the reason that came about was 2017, I think it was actually. Because the reason it came about was I had a long stay in hospital after that. I was convalescing in the family living room and I was still in such a bad physical state that I wasn't able to get upstairs or anything like that. So I was living according to something known in medical terms as triangular living environment, which was literally between bed, wheelchair, and the dreaded commode. And at that time, I genuinely felt like I was the only person in the world that was going through what I was going through. There were some great books out there, which I'm not going to take anything away from, written by some amazing psychiatrists and psychologists and such like from a medical background. But I couldn't find anything out there which related to the trauma I was going through as a survivor, or victim as I was seeing myself back then, survivor as I see myself now. And again, I'm sure you'll understand yourself, Elaine, with your backstory. It's one of those things that's a small change in semantics, but a massive change in mindset. And that was the reason that I wrote the book, because there was nothing out there. And I just thought anyone else going through this after me that also feels like they're the only one in the world, I want them to be able to reach out and read how other people have gone through it and how they overcame it. So that was the reason for publishing the book back in 2017.
And where can people get hold of the book, Roger?
It's currently having a rewrite at the moment, because I got it out as a limited edition just so there was something out there to be able to help people. And once the rewrite's completed, it'll be launched as a first edition, and it will then be available on Amazon as a download. So it's readily available for people to have it there and then.
Right. Okay. So it's going to be a Kindle ebook.
I'm going to bring it out as an ebook as well, and looking to republish a first edition as well, which probably will be available through my website, which again is also under construction. As I'm evolving, everything around me seems to be needing to evolve with me.
Okay. Do you have a Facebook presence? I'm just thinking of listeners, if any listeners want to get hold of you, and perhaps to book you for a talk or anything, how would they get hold of you?
Absolutely, yes. I'm all across social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And my Facebook page is author Roger Cheetham, all one word.
And you're spelling Cheetham how?
CHEETHAM.
So author Roger Cheetham, all together on Facebook.
That's right, yes.
Okay, cool. That's wonderful. So did you receive any counselling or trauma therapy of any kind while you were still in the victim mode and recovery?
Whilst I was actually in hospital, I did have a clinical psychologist assigned to me, and there was something of an issue there anyway, as I contracted MRSA within a week of being in hospital. So most of that 3.5 month stay, on top of everything else I was dealing with, was in isolation. And the clinical psychologist, believe it or not, I'll not name names, but had a major issue with the fact that he was a professional gentleman and had to wear a yellow apron to enter my room. Now, for anyone that knows about infection, yellow is the warning colour of infection. So anybody coming into the room, whether it was the most senior consultant down to the lady coming round with the drinks trolley, had to wear a yellow apron to go in there. Whenever I went for an x-ray or anything, there had to be some form of yellow tied to the bed head, almost like I used to joke about it being almost like the modern day equivalent of the leper bell and someone walking ahead of you shouting unclean. But obviously it was done with the right intention and everything. So, but for someone like a clinical psychologist to be more focused on that was quite concerning for me at the time. And after a couple of visits, he actually said I had such a positive mindset and I'd done so much for myself that I ticked all the boxes, which meant they weren't able to justify me still having a clinical psychologist assigned to me. And that was literally it. After all that, 2 visits while still an inpatient, and left to my own devices beyond that, Elaine.
So you've had nothing since?
There was nothing straight away. I think a little bit further down the line, I was actually referred by my GP to the local mental health services because I was again showing signs of anxiety. Never actually got to the depression stage, but they believed there were early signs of anxiety there, which is understandable under the circumstances. And again, within a couple of sessions, because of sort of the positive mental attitude I was maintaining, the motivational YouTube videos I was watching, the self-development books I was making my best attempt to read to with my one good eye at the time, because the operation to put the titanium floor in and I came months after being discharged. So as I describe it, it pretty much looked like my right eye was a dead fish laying on the bottom of the tank, is how I describe it. It was just not at all seated as it should have been. But yeah, apart from the 2 sessions in hospital and roundabout 2 sessions, maybe a year or so down the line after being discharged, nothing. It's all been my own determination and resilience to move forward and not try and get back to where I was before, because one of the things I often say when I'm speaking with fellow trauma survivors, and they'll say to me, I just want to get back to where I was before. It's making them see that without telling them what they can't do, which is never good when you're trying to encourage someone, but to encourage them to realise that when you've undergone trauma, it's such a big thing, you can never really get back to where you were before. But what you can do is move forward in the most positive way.
It's a new kind of
available
novel,
to
isn't it?
Yes, absolutely that.
So your mindset basically is what's pulled you through, isn't it? because a lesser person would have just crumbled and literally died on the floor that night.
Very much so, yes. And the thing for me, the initial thing, I mean, there have been several factors. The big thing for me was taking the focus away from myself and putting it on others. Again, it's often been said that a person will do more for others than they will do for themselves. And that's why in the self-development world, accountability is such a big thing, because people won't let down an accountability partner as easily as they'll make and accept excuses to themselves. And at the time, Claire, my wife, had been there visiting me day in and day out for every day I wasn't on the operating table. Our daughter Tash was 15 at the time and studying for her GCSEs. And again, a lesser 15-year-old may well have thought, what's the importance of exams in the grand scheme of things when I don't even know whether my dad's going to live or not? Tasha's outlook was very different. She looked at it as, I'm going to do the best I possibly can in my exams under the circumstances. And therefore, if my dad does survive, I can add my exam results to the ever-growing long list of things that he's proud of me for. And I'm able to share with you today, one proud dad, that Tash left school with 11 GCSEs at grade B and above. And I know that may not mean too much to an international audience, but those understanding the UK grading system will know that that is one heck of an achievement for any 15-year-old, let alone one that had going on in life what Tash had going on in life at that time.
You perhaps ought to do a father-daughter book or a father-daughter stage talk or something.
The father-daughter book's a great idea. I think if we mentioned the idea of going on stage to Tash, she'd probably run a marathon in record time getting away from that. It's not her thing, really.
Okay, and your poor wife dealing with all of this. So how on earth did your wife get through all of this? Did she have a support network?
She was extremely strong for me while ever she was there visiting day in and day out. Knowing Claire as I do, I'm pretty sure she'd have gone home and cried herself to sleep each and every night. And I say home, I mean, that was the other thing. The pub was home as it was a living environment. And obviously with what happened, it was no longer deemed safe for Claire or Tash to return there. So we just had to abandon everything, really, with the exception of an overnight bag. And we were very fortunate in that Claire's mum and dad took in Claire and Tash. So she was fortunate that she had somewhere to sleep of an evening, and her mum cooked her meals for her and everything for when she got in from visiting me in hospital. So yeah, that strong support network really was invaluable for both Claire and Tash at that time.
Gosh, quite a remarkable family altogether. Amazing. Must be very proud.
Absolutely.
So do either of you work at the moment? Because your whole life has been turned upside down.
It very much has. I mean, for me, they always say that if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day again in your life. So for me, work is all about putting together keynote speeches, sharing my story, making sure that the story, which pretty much stays the same, is tweaked to make it fit the audience that I'm in front of. I haven't gone back to driving since the attack, as with the titanium floor in one eye has meant that my spatial awareness and depth perception is not what it should be. And with a 3-inch built-up shoe, I'm so concerned about hitting the accelerator rather than the brake that whilst I strive to be as independent as I possibly can, that's not at the risk of putting other road users at risk. So Claire is classed as my full-time carer. She's also my driver. And even when it comes to speaking internationally, just the fact that it's one of the times where I have to swap the 2 crutches for a wheelchair just to get through the whole challenges that an airport throws at us. then sort of wheeling yourself through an airport with a suitcase and hand luggage on your own is not ideal when Claire's available to come with me and continue to support me. So that's pretty much how, whilst I don't class it as work, that's our equivalent of work these days.
And what's your daughter doing now? She must be, well, obviously a few years older. So, so what's her story now?
Yes, Tash turned 22 in October this year, and she is following her dreams. Actually, she's always been an absolute animal lover, and she's always wanted to be in vet nursing. And I'm pleased to say she has landed her dream job. She's now a student veterinary nurse at a local practice here in the UK, so she's not had to move far from home, although she'd have to move out from home because, being the caring person she is, every stray that's brought in, every dog that is healthy enough to continue living, but the owners see that euthanasia is the only option, somehow tends to end up living in Tasha's house. I think at last count, they've 2 dogs, a cat, 3 hand-reared kittens, and 2 rats at the moment. So, yeah, it gives an idea that she's certainly living her dream job.
Fantastic. And you mentioned when you were walking that night, that fateful night, that you were walking your dog. So what happened to the dog?
The situation was that I tried to unfasten this collar, and the animal lovers will understand, putting the dog's safety before my own. Unfortunately, they moved in too quickly. The first sickening blow, they actually landed on Jasper, but fortunately, because the collar was part undone, it just loosened the collar and he ran off to safety. So he found his way back home that night, unlike me, for another 3.5 months.
So is Jasper still about?
Unfortunately not, no. We lost him just coming up to a year ago now. Very hard to deal with. I mean, but some people will say it's only a pet. For other people who are animal lovers, then they understand that that pet is part of the family. For me, him being at my side, going through that, it was even more than that, to be honest. So it was an incredibly sad time. But again, looking for the positive in every negative, rather than thinking, well, we've no longer got Jasper with us. We could have lost Jasper back on the 9th of June 2013 quite easily. So we did have another good 5 years out of him that were pretty much bonus years, in all honesty. And I tend to focus on that.
I bet he was really pleased when you came home out of hospital.
Very much so, yes.
So, on the 9th of June, then every year, do you celebrate? Do you mark the occasion at all, or not?
I do, in all honesty, yes. I celebrate the occasion. I mean, I've just had my 50th birthday, and at one time I used to look at things as, oh no, I'm another year older. Whereas now I just look at it as that was really the first milestone birthday that I nearly didn't see. So it was a celebration. Usually I do celebrate, and it's also very much a day for reflection, looking back on where I was back then and how life was before that, as to where I am now. And each year on year, it absolutely amazes me. I mean, on the 9th of June last year, I hadn't spoken in my first classroom. I hadn't spoken for my first assembly. I hadn't cut my teeth as an international speaker. And here we are now in the autumn or the fall for your international audience. And all those things have changed in that last year. So always good on the 9th of June to have a look and see how life has improved year on year.
You mentioned journaling. So did you keep a journal before the incident, or is it something that you've taken to since?
It's something I've taken to since. I have to say, prior to the attack, I'll be quite honest, I was probably very cynical indeed about a lot of things, but being a Yorkshireman and a pub landlord, I've probably got one foot in two of the most cynical camps that there are, so that's no surprise there.
So do you keep a journal now every day?
I do indeed, yes. I aim for every day. It's not quite every day. I'm not as disciplined as I would like to be, but I strive for every day, and then if I miss the odd day, most days are still journaled.
A friend of mine, in fact, who was on the radio show this week, she's just created the most amazing journal, which is a really, really useful tool, and which got her through all kinds of dreadful situations. I'll send you a link to it, because it's really special. It's not just an ordinary journal. It mixes personal development stuff in as well, and clearly you've been through the personal development journey, even though you've done it naturally by the sounds of it, and obviously reading books and so on. It's always nice to get a bit of help, isn't it?
It is indeed. It's not a lady called Lorraine Dixon, is it?
No, it's
No,
Angie
right.
Simmons. Angie Simmons.
I believe I've heard that name.
Yes, Claire Cahill is the mutual connection there.
I'm with you.
Yeah, speak to Claire, and she'll put you in the right direction. So two songs I ask people to choose, and you've chosen "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey and "Only the Strong Survive" by Billy Paul. So I think both of those titles speak for themselves, but is there anything particularly you'd like to say as to why you chose those two, Roger?
I think "Only the Strong Survive" is because really resilience is the strength that you do need to keep going, as I talked about with my message earlier. And the other message that I share is that resilience isn't just about bouncing back, it's about springing forward. And I think the Billy Paul song, "Only the Strong Survive," really sums that up. And the other one, "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey. It's been a heck of a journey, as you can imagine. And it's a really motivational, inspirational song. And also it's relevant because shortly before I was attacked, and obviously didn't see that coming at all, myself, Claire and Tash went to London to see the stage show of Rock of Ages in the West End, which turned out to be the last family break we had whilst I was still able-bodied. So given that "Don't Stop Believing" actually features in that stage show, it has a lot of relevance from a personal point of view as well.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Well, a completely remarkable family, led by a very remarkable man. So thank you for your time this afternoon, Roger. I'm sure
Absolute pleasure.
listeners will be inspired by what they've heard today and know that anything is possible.
Thank you.